23 hurts me. There is quality in there. Don't get me wrong, if you're a fan of Season 23, I completely get why. It's not like with Season 20 where it's like there is just a lack of quality there, even though there is a nugget of gold in there. It's like they took a whole nugget of gold, right? And just divvied it out by, like, shaving it into buckets of shit. That is my review of Season 23. I don't like the trial of the Time Lord. I don't like it. The apathy towards the entire narrative device generally makes it hard for me to go back to this season. Mysterious Planet I've never really liked at all. I think it's bland and boring, and there's some fun in there, but it just doesn't really interest me. The most interesting thing about it is that the Time Lords did some shady stuff. Oh my god, I would have never guessed. Who could have thought the Doctor's people who he ran away from because they are shady and stuff did a shady thing. Mind Warp is probably the best, but it's a mess. No one really knows the character motivations, and therefore there isn't really a focus, so it's basically just torture porn. Which, to be fair, Vengeance on Varos was also torture porn, but with an actual focus and narrative story, basically. Well, it's not saying Mind Warp doesn't have a story, it's just, what is the Doctor fighting? We don't know. And that's the problem. It's still really good. I do definitely think the performances are solid, and there is an attempt at balance with the entire premise of the story. And it does end on a very grim and poignant note. And I honestly think that is fine, and it does feel earned. So there are elements to the story, or I say to the story, to the segment of the story, and I'm basically awarding Mind Warp the crown jewel, because it is the best that this season has to offer. Now, that being said, Terror of the Vervoids is also, I think it's an objectively better written story. However, the high points aren't quite as high. Mel is introduced in a really interesting way. They just don't bother with an introduction with Mel as a character, which is sad. I'd like to have seen her first interactions with the Doctor. We do get to see the Doctor's first interactions with her, but that's not really made a point about, because the Ultimate Foe, those last 2 episodes were a mess. They could have been less of a mess. It was inevitably going to be a mess of some kind, because you can't exactly blame it for the writer dying halfway through, but you know, everything that happened after that kind of resulted in just a mess that wasn't fun and not a good climax at all. But I enjoy Mel in this season. I enjoy the Doctor in this season. I enjoy what Terror of the Vervoids was trying to go for. And I also enjoy how it conducts itself, and how the characters are handled, how the mystery is handled. Mel screaming isn't actually anywhere near as annoying as people make out in her entire run, but I am looking at this isolated example. Obviously other examples may differ. But the whole murder mystery aspect of it, murder mysteries are always, they are a good story structure generally, and having one of the characters already have met the Doctor and kind of has this sinking feeling that something bad is going to happen is an interesting angle to take a character. And some of the characters are suspicious, some are not. But once we find out what's going on, we get a perceived sense of threat, and I do appreciate what this story does in the context of the trial. The trial scenes are easily the weakest part of, well, I say the story, this segment of the story, because Trial of the Time Lords one story, it just has different writers contributing different adventures the Doctor has been on. They are curating those adventures. The overall story is one story. But I do appreciate what Terror of the Vervoids brings to the trial itself. And what it does is concrete proof, or rather the final piece of the puzzle of what is going on, and that is the absolute confidence we can have that something's being meddled with in terms of the Matrix. But I don't like the trial aspect of the entire story, so therefore I'm not a fan of the story. I don't mind 14 weeks of a courtroom drama. That's fine. The actors pull it off. The direction pulls it off. The writing does not. I do not believe the constant bickering between the Doctor and the Valeyard actually worked. I don't. I fundamentally do not. Not to say that I don't think it would. I do definitely think if you're going to make a Doctor bicker with someone, make it the Sixth Doctor, because it's the most entertaining. And I do definitely think this plays to Colin Baker's strengths throughout. I definitely think Michael Jaston brings to the character of the Valeyard what was needed in terms of performance, and I do definitely think in Big Finish audios he really gets to stretch his muscles of what the Valeyard can be. And also in The Ultimate Foe, I will admit the freedom he gets as the Valeyard in that, I think, is good. Linda Bellingham as the Inquisitor is amazing. I definitely think you needed someone like Linda Bellingham as that character to sort of rein in these two big personalities. I'm not going to spoil who the Valeyard is, even though I'm pretty sure most of you probably already know. If you don't, I don't want to spoil it, because I want you to enjoy anything the story has to offer. Because I don't actively want to be all doom and gloom. This is just not for me. And also, I don't think the twist... The twist is almost a good twist. They just made it too confusing of who the Valeyard actually is. They could have made it a lot simpler. But I do appreciate who he's meant to be. And as a result, the actions they've taken are pretty interesting, and I do enjoy it. I just think if they made it simpler, it would have been way more effective. The Season 23 Blu-ray box set actually has Terror of the Vervoids on its own, and I do think that is an improved experience. They also alter some shots using CGI to try and make the story a better experience, let's say. Some of the effects were dated, but it was a minor amount that they updated. If you're a purist, don't worry. This is just an ultimate way to experience the story that I think is an improved way. You don't get all the baggage this season provides with this new version. So I do definitely think... Maybe let's say that's the crown jewel. Why not? So yeah, this has just been me rambling about a season that every time I think about it, I'm actually apathetic. That being said, look, this whole series is meant to be proving that there is something good in every Doctor Who season, and there is good in here. I just definitely think it's a lot harder to talk about, given the overarching storyline of this season is quite intrusive to the overall experience. Flux, it wasn't intrusive enough, one may argue, but I definitely think the way Flux handled it made it easier. So when I get to that, I won't have a lot of... I might mention some critiques about how the storyline overall was handled, but I do prefer Series 13 to Season 23, and I think the weakest of that season stands up pretty well against this season. But that being said, I don't know if I'd call this my least favorite Classic Who season. It's probably in my bottom 3, bottom 3, bottom 4, because I'm not a fan of Season 15. Season 18, I think I'm starting to warm up on a bit. Season 20, I don't think so, and this. But next week, we have a season that I enjoy. I don't consider it amazing. It is probably another one of the weaker Classic Who seasons, but there is a gulf in quality between Season 24, which is next time, and this. I definitely think they made a leap, and it's not just because it's my favourite Doctor, but it's because it's my favourite script editor taking the helm, but there's going to be growing pains. So, pretty soon we'll get to some of my favourite seasons of the entire show, but tomorrow, let's stop at Paradise Towers, maybe? Or let's go to Wales for Delta and the Bannerman, or Ice World, or, no, that's it, it won't be Time of the Rani. But yeah, that's your little teaser. And with that, I'll see you then. Cheerio.